Have you ever gone to a church service and wondered, who is this actually for? Is this for believers or is it designed to appeal to unbelievers? It's a question that many Christians feel, but we rarely say it out loud because many of our today's non-denominational evangelical churches appeal to unbelievers rather than to believers. But this did not happen overnight. It is the result of decades of small shifts in philosophy. We began to come to a conclusion that God obviously cares for the unchurched, for the unsaved. What if we make them feel welcome in our churches so that when they come to our churches, they don't feel out of place? Let's make our Sundays to become primarily for unbelievers rather than believers. We began to shorten our messages. We began to remove theological language. We emphasize entertainment. We avoid difficult subject and we replace it with feel-good, positive messages that would appeal to masses. This way, the unbelievers can come to church and feel good. We need to get rid of the churchiness of the church. So we went from shepherding to marketing. We stopped asking, what does God want the church to be? And we began to ask, what do unbelievers want the church to be? This shifted everything. We began to make our sermons to build around psychology rather than scripture. Our worship became designed for entertainment rather than reverence. And we began to measure success by numeric growth instead of transformation. This in turn began to produce shallow teaching, shallow believer, emotionalism instead of discipleship, numeric growth without spiritual maturity, churches built around personalities, believers remaining immature, and worship became performance. And sermons are becoming more like self-help and motivation talk instead of helping us grow spiritually. That's why it's becoming harder to distinguish between a Christian and non-Christian because we have forgotten to build the believers up, to bring them to maturity, to make them to become disciples of Jesus. We ultimately sacrifice depth for appeal. This is why today so many of our believers lack depth and spiritual maturity. The word church actually is ekklesia. It's the Greek word that means called out ones or a called out assembly. The people that God has called out of this world to himself. And this assembly is called the church. And here are some scriptural verses that tells us what the church is for. In Acts 2:42 we read, the church devoted itself to teaching, fellowship, breaking bread, and prayer. Ephesians 4:11-12 tells us leaders are to equip the saints for the work of ministry. 1 Corinthians 14:26 we read, gatherings are for building up believers. Hebrews 10:24-25 we read, we gather to stir one another to love and good works. You see, the church is a gathering of the people who are already saved, whom God has called out to himself. And as this group comes together, they come together for teaching, for building each other up, encouraging one another, serving one another. If an unbeliever wants to come and to visit a church service, they're more than welcome, obviously. But the program of a church should not be primarily geared toward the unbelievers and forsake the believers. But in reality, it should be geared toward believers, toward bringing them to maturity, toward making them to become disciples of Jesus. But you see, as we grow in our godliness, in our discipleship, as we become more conformed to the likeness of Christ, then we, as we go out into the world, we reach the unsaved. We do not want to conform the church to a place where unsaved people can come and feel comfortable. But we want the church to be what it was designed to be, a gathering of the saints, and to be built up in godliness. But when we flip this, everything gets flipped, because the church was never meant to be shaped by the preference of the unsaved, but by the purposes of God. When we return to a scripture and discover that Sunday is not a show for seekers, but it is a gathering for the saints. And when the saints are builded up and disciples and become more godly, then they become the ones who reach the lost. Evangelism is to be done by the people of God as they go out into the world. But if we forsake ourselves, if we forsake of our building up, then we are turning church into something that it was never meant to be, a place where unsaved feel comfortable. Then we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing? We are bending backward to show the unsaved that we're just like you. But is that how it was supposed to be? You see, a healthy church does not choose between saved or unsaved. It disciples the saved so that they can go and reach the unsaved. Well, what is your thought about these things? Let me know in the comments below. I look forward in reading what you have to say. But until then, until next time, may the Lord be with you. May He watch over you. May He make His face to shine upon you. This is David Sami with a Christian Journey.